So I grew up in a church that frequently cited Revelation chapter 3, where Jesus says that you're neither hot nor cold, and I wish that you were one of the other, but since you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. And I know growing up, I always thought, man, I don't know how I'm going to be hot all the time. Because I mean, sort of the inference is you were either hot, radical for Jesus, or he would rather you be cold rather than be in the middle. And that always was a problem for me because I felt like if there was anything about my spirituality, it was probably borderline medium on a regular basis. And so for a long time, I struggled with that, the guilt, the just sort of feeling like, does God really love me? Am I really a Christian? And all of that. Till one day when I was reading in Revelation and I was reading some commentaries and had started to go to school in the academic setting, I realized that where Laodicea, which is the church that Jesus is writing to in Revelation 3, Laodicea was located not too far from Hierapolis and Colossae, which were two other cities in that area. And in Colossae and in Hierapolis, they actually had a water system where there was very cold water and very warm water, and it was very useful. In Colossae, the cold water obviously would be for drinking. They could even actually put stuff in the cold water and it would give it some sort of refrigeration for a little bit of time. The hot water obviously was medicinal and used for things like that. But the only way Laodicea could get its water, because its water was very calcified and you couldn't drink it. So if you took a drink of the Laodicean water, you'd spit it up because it just sort of gave you that reflux feeling when you drink it. The only way they could get their water was to bring it in via aqueduct. And so what would happen is that water that would come into Laodicea, whether it was cold or whether it was hot, as it traveled down the aqueducts, the cold water would warm up and the hot water would cool down. And so by the time it got to Laodicea, it was lukewarm. And what Jesus is really saying is he's saying, I know your works. He doesn't say, I know your salvational fervency. I know how radical you are for me. He says, I know your works. And what Jesus is wanting from the Laodicean church is a church that is useful. And the hot and the cold water was useful, which is why he says, I wish you were hot or cold. But what they were is they were very rich, very increased with goods, and didn't think that they really needed anything. And so therefore, their spiritual works for the Lord were very minimal. And that is what Jesus is talking about in Revelation chapter 3.